listening to the Corbett Report.
Welcome, my friends. Welcome to another edition of the Corbett Report. I'm your host, James Corbett of CorbettReport.com, coming to you, as always, from the very sunny climes of Western Japan, here in May of 2025, with episode 477 of the Corbett Report podcast, Reportage Book Launch. Story time. So back when I was a kid, when I was 9 or 10 years old, my parents shipped me out one day to go to a creative writing workshop, an all-day workshop event that was taking place somewhere in my local area, probably just as a way to get me out of the house during a long summer vacation. And you know what? During the course of that day and spending time doing little writing exercises and talking about writing and realizing I really do like writing and I like books, I came to the decision that I'm going to be a writer. That was way back when I was 10 years old, and ever since then, it's always been a core part of my identity. I'm a writer. I like words, I like language, I like writing. I've always wanted to inform and hopefully entertain people with my words. And yes, I think I did accomplish that with the Corbett Report in different ways. Obviously audio, visual, textual work, but not quite a finished, published book. I've always wanted to be a published author. Well, here we are decades later after coming to that decision, and wouldn't you know it, that dream is now a reality, a physical published book called Reportage, Essays on the New World Order, available now at reportagebook.com or wherever fine books are sold. I hope you have your copy by now, but if not, consider today's podcast an extended invitation for you to do so. I like to think it'll be worth your time and attention if you're interested in the kind of work that I do. This is a collection of essays on history, geopolitics, science, eugenics, false flag terrorism, Bilderberg, and all sorts of other incredibly important topics. But this is a physical, real, actual book, a book that you could give to someone. Hey, I've got a book that you might be interested in. Hey, just read this one essay. You can read the rest if you like it. Something along those lines. I'd like to think that that's what this book will be useful for. And so today I want to share with you the incredible experience that I recently had of having my first ever real, true, in-world book reading, where I read from my newly published book to a bunch of people who came, sometimes from far and wide, to see me read. It was an incredibly important moment in my life, and I'm glad to be able to share it with all of you who weren't able to make it in person. I know you were there in spirit, and I appreciate that. But now I want to share with you that book reading. So for those who don't know, me, my assistant Sean, and Brock West, video editor extraordinaire, traveled all the way to Osaka in Western Japan to have a real-world book reading at the Deck in Osaka, and it was an incredible success. A lot of people came. It was a beautiful turnout. I met and shook hands with people in real life, and now you get to enjoy, well, the virtual remnants of that experience, and I hope you do enjoy it. So here's me reading from my book, Reportage, Essays on the New World Order, in Osaka, Japan.
We talked about making food.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, I think that was in a way. Yeah, nice to see you. But I forget your name. I'm sorry.
Thank you guys sincerely for coming here today. You might have an inkling of a clue of how much this means to me, but probably not in its entirety. I have wanted to be a writer since I was a little child, and this is my first book, my first baby. Oh wait, I have 2 actual children. Okay, no, not my first baby, but you get the idea. So it's incredibly important to me that I'm having a physical, real-world book launch in the real world with actual human beings who have come here to see this. It's one thing to talk to a camera all the time. It's another thing to look people in the eye. So thank you very much for being here and being part of this. So I'm going to read a few passages from the book. Don't worry, nothing too voluminous. And then we'll have a little Q&A, and then we'll have the book signing. Does that sound okay? All right. All right. In order to set the stage for this, if you know nothing at all about this book, then I'm going to read a little bit from the preface of this book, where I explain what the book is and how it came together. It is, of course, called Reportage, Essays on the New World Order, and In my preface, I talk about where the genesis of this book, that if you haven't heard it before, might be surprising. So I will skip through the excellent foreword by Whitney Webb. I hope you all read that because it's very nice. But let's go to the author's preface, where I write, "The book you are holding in your hands was 15 years in the writing." I hesitate to put that sentence to paper because I realize it almost certainly gives the wrong impression. To be clear, no, I have not been stuck at my writing desk for the past 15 years, agonizing over each word in the book every single day. Rather, I put pen to paper on the first essay of this collection 15 years ago, and worked on the other essays intermittently, writing and rewriting and rewriting as time allowed, and put the finishing stroke on the last jot, or was it the last tittle, just days ago. As you can imagine, a lot has taken place since I began writing this collection in 2009, both in my own personal life and, of course, in the wider world of politics and society that is the primary concern of this volume. For my own part, I got married, had 2 children, purchased a single-family house, and somewhere along the way, turned my humble podcasting side gig into a full-time career. Meanwhile, the world outside has likewise undergone a total transformation. From the economic fallout of a global financial crisis to the geopolitical fallout of conflicts around the world, from the unveiling of the globalists to the rise of the populists, from the post-9/11 homeland security paradigm to the post-scamdemic biosecurity paradigm, the world of 2024 is remarkably different from the world of 2009. And yet, at the same time, our predicament today is remarkably similar to the one we found ourselves in at the time I started this book. Free humanity is still battling the same gang of greedy globalists, egocentric eugenicists, and power-mad plutocrats that we were confronting back then. They may be further along in their unfolding agenda of technocratic control, but our struggle against them is largely the same. To some extent, then, this book is a meditation on the paradox of the passage of time. Plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose. Naturally, I've learned many things over the past decade and a half, come to many realizations, grown in my understanding, and changed my views on all manner of subjects. Back in 2009, for instance, I was a statist who was apt to suggest writing your member of parliament or voting for a third-party candidate as the, sorry, totally lost my place, as solutions to our plight. Today, I'm a voluntarist who believes that the way to improve our world is not by casting a vote for yet another would-be political ruler, but by investing our time, energy, attention, and resources in building our own independent communities from the bottom up. This book, then, not only documents the hidden history of the deep state and reveals the covert agenda of those seeking to steer global events, it not only suggests courses of action for those of us seeking to reclaim control of our own lives, it also provides insight into the development of my own thinking on these subjects over the course of 15 years of research. The essays in this collection have not been arranged in the order they were composed, however. Instead, they have been arranged so that topics flow logically from one to the next, and so that insights gleaned in one piece might help the reader contextualize the information imparted in a subsequent one. In this fashion, I hope the book, if read front to back, fosters an iterative understanding of its main subject matter, the New World Order. So, what is the New World Order? You will not find a simple definition of that term in these pages. Rather, the essays showcase many, but certainly not all, of the aspects of this multifaceted idea. Having said that, it is certainly not necessary to read this book from front to back or in any particular order. Each essay was written separately, and so can be consumed singly and appreciated on its own. If a certain title appeals to you, flip to that page and start reading. The rest of the essays will still be right here, even if it takes you 15 years to read them all. By the way, I've had multiple people tell me they read this in one day. 15 years of work in one day. Oh, good. Okay, of course, seeing a book like this through its prolonged birth pangs all the way to delivery would not have been possible without the support of many, many midwives. To name them all would be impossible, but at the risk of offending anyone I don't cite, I would be remiss if I did not single out some of my friends, colleagues, and family members for special recognition. First, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to Aretha Van Herk and to all the students in her creative writing workshop at the University of Calgary in the late 1990s. Before stepping into that classroom, I thought I knew how to write. Fortunately, Van Herk and the incredible group of talented writers and readers in the workshop proved me wrong. Their careful critique taught me, I hope, how to make my writing engaging, even inspiring. But if you find my prose ponderous, you can credit that class for it not being much, much worse. I would also like to thank all of my colleagues in the independent media, but especially James Evan Pilato of MediaMonarchy.com, the only person with whom I can imagine doing New World Next Week for the past 15 years and counting, and Brock West, the only person who I can imagine as my video editor for the past 10 years and counting. Thank you both for your insights, your hard work, your humor, and for keeping me sane in insane times. They say that behind every good writer is a good editor. I don't dare opine on the quality of my writing, but I can absolutely opine on the quality of this book's editing. Susan, from the sunny climes of the southern states, is a diligent, meticulous editor whose second set of eyes have been poring over my words for the last several years. She has not only suggested le mot juste at le bon moment to make a sentence sparkle, but has many a time helped me see how my perfectly clear and completely understandable thoughts may not be so understandable to a third party. Thank you, Susan, for your tireless efforts and for helping make these essays as excellent, that's her word, not mine, as they can possibly be. I'd like to extend my sincere and heartfelt gratitude to the Corbett Report members who have made this work possible. Please know that your moral support, your monetary contributions, your feedback in the comment section of the website, and your insistence in spreading the word about this information are all deeply appreciated. And next, a huge thank you to my parents. I realize now that my mother and father did not simply provide me with a loving and supportive home, though they certainly did that. More importantly, they gave me a fine example of how to provide the same kind of home to my own family. It is my sincere wish that I can pass that gift on to my children. Finally, I cannot imagine where I'd be without the patience and encouragement of my darling wife, and I would not want to imagine what my life would be like without the wonder and joy that my beautiful boy and my adorable daughter bring to it. This book is for my children and for all our children. Although the particulars may be different, our task is the same one that has faced every generation since the dawn of humanity: to raise our children in truth, in wisdom, and in love. As long as we continue to do so, I have faith that the future will be bright. James Corbett, July 2024, The Sunny Climes of Western Japan. Thank you. All right. J. To differentiate from all of the identical ones at the gym that I go to. All right, let's read something interesting, I hope, about the monetary system, which, if you have followed my work, you will know has been something that I've talked about since the very beginning of the Corbett Report and continue to talk about because I think it's rather important, because it tells us not just about money, but about the way that we have structured our society. So, this one is titled, Selling Your Soul for a Matrix Steak. It may not be the first scene that comes to mind when you think of The Matrix, but if you've seen the movie, you probably remember when Cypher is in the restaurant telling Agent Smith why he's selling out Neo and his friends. I know that this steak doesn't exist, he says, eyeing a juicy red chunk of meat quivering on the end of his fork. I know when I put it in my mouth, the Matrix is telling my brain that it is juicy and delicious. And I bet you can remember that moment when he stuffs the meat into his mouth, closing his eyes in delight as he mutters, "Ignorance is bliss." Long story short, for those who haven't seen the Hollywood action flick, The Matrix is a computer-generated illusion designed to trick humans into believing that they are living in 1999. In the fictional world of the movie, however, it's actually the 22nd century, and humanity has been enslaved by a swarm of dastardly robots. Imprisoned in a vast network of pods, the humans' bodies are being harvested for electrical energy to power the very robots that are holding them in bondage. Everyone has been jacked into the Matrix, a virtual reality role-playing game designed to prevent humans from ever learning the truth of their plight, much less ever doing anything about it. In one sense, Cypher is completely correct. He is not in a restaurant. He is not eating a steak. And he is not, in fact, talking to anyone. All of the things he is experiencing are an illusion, conjured into existence by an elaborate computer program and fed into his central nervous system. But his brain is tricking him into believing that he's eating a delicious steak and drinking vintage wine, and that's good enough for him. Now, what if I were to tell you that those dollars or pesos or euros or yen that you carry around in your wallet have all the unreality of a Matrix steak? What if you've toiled your entire adult life in a store or an office or a factory, day in and day out, year after year after year, for something that isn't even real? And what if, just as in the film, someone, somewhere, someday, could simply throw a switch, making all those Matrix steaks you've spent your whole life chasing simply disappear like that? Would that devastate you? Okay, I know what you're thinking. What? You're comparing our monetary system to the Matrix? Next, you're going to tell us there's an army of robots pumping a fake reality into our brain to enslave us. Don't be ridiculous. I didn't say anything about robots. But let's take a step back for a second. After all, no one can be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself. So, take a look. Open up your wallet. Go on, open it. If you're lucky enough to have one of those pieces of paper that passes for money where you live, take it out. What do you see? Is it merely a colorful slip of dyed cotton? But how can this be? People are turned to crime and vice in pursuit of this? Great loves are torn asunder for the lack of it? Wars are fought, murders committed, honorable men brought to disgrace in the names of these pieces of paper? Imagine a Martian landing on our planet for the first time and observing the human species. He watches us scrambling from home to office to home day after day. He sees us stealing from the store, scamming our neighbors, betraying our loved ones. All for what? These elusive pieces of paper? It makes no sense to him. There must be more to the system than meets the eye, he speculates. The colored cotton these humans carry around in their wallets must be of great worth. Why else would they value it so? To get a handle on the real worth, or lack thereof, of these paper bills, let's consider an extreme example: counterfeit money. Counterfeit bills look like real money. They feel like real money. An inattentive shopkeeper may accept a crisp C note from a customer and value it exactly as he would any other $100 bill he receives. But the moment it is revealed to be a counterfeit, it's rendered valueless. Not because the bill itself has changed, but because the shopkeeper's perception of it has changed. These observations are hardly revolutionary. We all know that money is simply colored ink on paper, just as we know that a Monet is simply oil on canvas. But we also understand that the ink on the paper and the oil on the canvas each represent something. In the case of a Monet, the brush strokes may represent the French countryside, or a bowl of fruit, or a celebration of Bastille Day. In the case of money, the paper represents underlying value, a form of wealth. It's a nebulous product that results when we mix our time and labor with the world around us, whether in building a house, or writing a computer program, or refining a barrel of oil. In other words, that colorful paper you're holding in your hands is the physical representation of an idea. Yeah, well, so what, you may be asking? Well, in order to understand why money as an idea is an important, even revolutionary concept, we have to look into the origins of these pieces of paper. As we learned in history class, money didn't always look like the cash we use today. Many objects have been used as money at different times and in different places, from seashells to lengths of wood to playing cards. Some types of objects have been used as money more often throughout history than others. Precious metals, for instance, by dint of their unique properties, have been used for trading not only within communities, but also between communities. Portable, divisible, malleable, and durable, precious metals are scarce enough to be valuable in their own right, and they are also prized for their beauty as ornaments or jewelry. Precious metals don't just represent value, they contain value. To primitive man, it only made sense that coins forged from these precious metals would make an ideal medium of exchange. What could be easier than carrying a purse full of these coins to the marketplace and exchanging them for goods and services? Governments may come and go, civilizations may rise and fall, and the faces embossed on the coins may change, but the utility of gold and silver never disappears. Why would anyone need to use another form of money? But then, a funny thing happened. In 1095, Pope Urban II called for a holy crusade against the Turks, who were threatening the Christian Byzantine Empire. And for the next 2 centuries, crusaders and pilgrims traveled from far and wide to Jerusalem to prove their piety. In those days, it wasn't exactly a case of calling up your travel agent and booking the next flight. Traveling long distances was an expensive, arduous, and often dangerous proposition. Carrying around all the coins necessary for feeding, clothing, and lodging their small entourage as they make their way from town to town, the Crusaders were easy prey for highwaymen. After a particularly bloody massacre of Christian pilgrims at the River Jordan in 1119, King Baldwin II of Jerusalem acceded to a request from Hugues de Payens, a French knight, to create an order of monk knights who would protect the pilgrims in the Holy Land. With this act, the legendary Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon, more commonly known as the Knights Templar, were born. The strategy that the Knights Templar devised to protect the riches of the pilgrims and crusaders on their perilous journey was as ingenious as it was devious. At the beginning of his trip, a crusader would deposit his metal money with the Templars and would in turn receive a certificate for that money. Anywhere along the main routes, the crusader could give his certificate to the local Templars, and they would pay him back as much of his original deposit as he wanted. All the Templars asked in return was to hold a portion of the crusader's land in his absence. They could sell whatever was produced from the land while he was away. That was their profit. An idea was born. The idea spread. Villagers began to store their gold in goldsmiths' vault for safekeeping. In return, they would receive slips of paper showing how much gold they had deposited. Since it was easier to exchange the slips of paper than the coins themselves, before long, the villagers began to regard the paper as money. The goldsmiths, realizing that only a fraction of the villagers ever wanted to withdraw their gold at any one time, began to print more certificates than they had gold in the vaults. As long as everyone didn't come to collect their gold at the same time, no one would notice that the goldsmiths were printing paper money out of thin air. Do you smell that? Those goldsmiths just grilled the very first matrix steaks. I'm sure I don't have to tell you the rest of the story about how the central banks were formed, about how the financial system developed, about how fractional reserve banking, fiat money, stock markets, derivatives, collateralized debt obligations, subprime mortgages, Fannie and Freddie, Lehman Brothers, AIG. I think you all know how that narrative goes. And even if you don't, you could work it out a priori. For you see, it all goes back to the advent of paper bills. Once we've accepted them as money, once we've decided that the matrix stake is a stake, the rest of the story is inevitable. Today's Templars, the central bankers, can replace our paper dollars for paper stocks and bonds and treasuries. They can tell us this matrix hamburger is just as tasty as the prime rib we used to have, and deluded wage slaves that we are will gladly eat it up. After all, one illusion is as good as another. It's only when the stock market collapses that we find out all they really did was swap our matrix steaks for matrix ground beef. Not only is it not real, it doesn't even taste good. From here, It's just a question of how long they can con us into accepting ever less substantial matrix money before the entire economic house of cards comes tumbling down. They've already replaced the matrix ground beef of stocks and bonds with the matrix spam of derivatives. And they've served us the matrix mystery meat of collateralized debt obligations. And they force-fed us a chemically processed meat substitute with cardboard filler and called it mortgage-backed securities, and on and on and on. Does any of what I've said bother you yet? Or are you still content with your lot, despite knowing that all of the wealth in your wallet is nothing more than matrix money? It's just an illusion, you snort, a hunk of juicy red matrix steak quivering on the end of your fork. What does it really matter? As long as everyone believes in the illusion, no one's the worse off, right? And, as if to prove your point, you shove the tender matrix meat into your mouth, savoring every bite. Oh, ignorance is bliss. But hold on a second. Before you swallow that steak, take a look at that bill in your hand one more time. Who issued it? It should say right on there. In Canada, it's the Bank of Canada. In Japan, it's the Bank of Japan. In England, it's the Bank of England. In Europe, it's the European Central Bank. In the US, it's the Federal Reserve. The bank's name is on the bill because it belongs to the bank, not to you. I'll let you in on the real secret, the real key to the entire matrix of control. Starting with the Bank of England in the 17th century and spreading slowly around the globe, the central government of country after country has ceded its power to print debt-free fiat money to privately owned central banks. Let me repeat that. Government after government, in country after country, has allowed private shareholders to set up unaccountable institutions headed by unelected bankers and granted them the power to create money out of thin air. But wait, it gets worse. As everyone knows, governments have debts, and they have to pay money to service those debts. But to whom are those governments in debt? Why, to the banksters, of course. Not only have governments given away the power to print money to private bankers, but they turn around and borrow that same money from the banks. And since we live in a system where every new dollar, or almost every new dollar, is created as debt owed with interest to the bankers, as soon as the first paper bill goes into circulation, there's automatically more money owed to the bankers than there is money that exists. Meanwhile, when the money to pay the interest on the paper bill is created, the government goes further into debt to the banks. The accumulating debt includes more interest payable to, guess who? The bankers. And so on ad infinitum. Since the money itself is created from debt, it is mathematically impossible to ever pay off the debt. It will never be retired. Your taxes will never go down. Not because they actually pay for governmental services, but because they are what the government uses to secure the debt. The debt that the government has created in your name. The debt that you now owe to the bankers. You will have to work longer and longer hours to pay higher and higher taxes to service the larger and larger debt forever and ever until the day you die, as will your children, as will their children, all the way to the crack of doom. There's no way to sugarcoat it. You've been a slave to the bankers since the day you were born. We all have. And you can blame it all on the innocent, colorful little pieces of paper you hold in your hand. But we're not done with our catalog of matrix woes yet. It gets even worse. With a simple change in the public's perception, the entire monetary order can come crashing down, whether by a dollar crash, a bank run, a financial panic, or some other dramatic event, and all the matrix stakes will disappear back into the abyss from which they were conjured. For those who think such a thing unlikely, I'm here to say that it is not only likely, it's inevitable. Every fiat currency eventually collapses. In Weimar Germany, the paper mark became less valuable than toilet paper. People pushed wheelbarrows full of bills down to the store to buy a loaf of bread. If they went to a restaurant, they would pay for their food at the beginning of the meal because they knew prices would rise before they finished eating. Germans in the 1920s knew the real value of a matrix stake. And now, as the illusionary stability of the post-World War II monetary order, the order that has reigned since King Dollar took over the world as the world reserve currency, comes to an end, and as more currency crashes and bank runs and digital money and all manner of monetary madness set in, where are we heading? Towards a revolution? A complete overthrow of the existing monetary system? Yes, hopefully. But the system wasn't set up overnight, and it won't be dismantled overnight. There will be a process of gradual change, and that change will only come about through organized, concerted, informed action. It will require us to use complementary currencies, local exchange trading systems, mutual credit, and other means of transacting with one another. It will mean supporting credit unions and alternative payment systems. It will mean developing agoristic alternatives to the state-controlled markets. It will mean exploring cryptocurrencies. It will mean fostering community organizations and farmers markets. And it will mean finding a million other ways to harness the real wealth of our labor in order to help build the world we want to live in. But something everyone can do right here, right now, is to make the conscious decision to see through the matrix, to recognize these pieces of paper for what they really are. Eye-catching, mouth-watering, but completely valueless matrix stakes. Because there will come a time in your life, as it does in everyone's life, when you will be asked to compromise your ideals, your beliefs, the very core of who you are for a few of these colorful scraps of paper. So, how about you? What lengths are you willing to go to in your quest for that almighty dollar? If someone asks you to sell your soul for a matrix stake, are you, like Cypher, going to close your eyes and take a blissful bite? Thank you. It does not taste good. It really doesn't. All right. Okay. I'll read one more passage, but I'll let you guys choose. Would you like to hear something mildly humorous or something uplifting?
Humorous.
Your wish, my command. Let's go with... Okay. Rule number 1 of comedy, never tell people it's going to be funny before they hear it, because no one will laugh. Damn it. And rule number 2, never point out the ramen stains on your shirt, because then people will start noticing. Oh, damn it. Okay. The next one is called How to Enjoy Your Servitude. Can you imagine trying to explain the 21st century to someone from the 1950s? 1950s. So let me get this straight. This magic box you carry around in your pocket, 2020s, it's called an iPhone. This magic box creates a list of every place you've been. Yes, and what time I went there and how long I was there for. And this log is automatically sent to a corporation in California? Yes. Aren't you afraid of what the company will do with all those records on you? What if it turns everything over to the government? Well, I'm not worried about that happening. But why not? Because the government already has all that data. Don't you know about the Patriot Act? Of course I know how a patriot would act in the face of such tyranny. I mean, this is your private information. It's unthinkable that you could be so careless about it. It's not careless, it's convenient. Why, just today I used Foursquare to check in at the restaurant where I ate lunch, updated my Facebook status while I ate lunch, updated my Facebook status while waiting for my afternoon Pilates class, and tweeted a selfie at the ball game this evening. I have no idea what any of that means. It means I'm not concerned about my privacy. Then I guess the commies have won. Come again? The Reds, you know, the Ruskies. Clearly the Soviets have taken over the US and you've all lost your minds, brainwashed by those crafty pinkos, no doubt. Oh, you mean the Soviet Union? I think I learned about that in history class. No. We're in the land of the free here. In what sense exactly are you free? And that would just be the start of the conversation. How would you even begin to explain that your identity cards and your passports are being digitized, loaded with your biometric data, and used against you as a tool of governmental surveillance and control? Or that an extrajudicial presidential kill list that easy for me to say, euphemistically referred to as a disposition matrix, presumes to grant the President of the United States the authority to kill anyone he wants, anyone, anywhere in the world, at any time. Or that an international treaty permits your personal banking details to be shared among the OECD nations as the first step toward an envisioned global tax grid. Or that secret DNA databases store blood samples collected from your newborn at birth, samples that are owned by private companies and studied by researchers without your knowledge or consent. How indeed would you explain the million other infringements on basic personal liberties that have taken place in the past half century? After all, you wouldn't simply be listing the encroachments on your liberty that have been wrought by technological advances. You'd be explaining the fundamental shift in the conception of those liberties and their importance in our lives that has taken place in recent decades. Even assuming you could teach this imaginary time traveler the technical details of the systems that are stripping us of our rights and freedoms, could you ever really explain the mindset of our generation? Doubtless the very liberties we are so cavalier about losing are the selfsame liberties that 50 years ago were considered so sacrosanct that no one even thought to articulate them, let alone protect them. Explaining their loss to someone of that era, then, might be well nigh impossible. 1950s. What you're saying reminds me of that English chap, Orwell. Just died recently, I hear. Did you read his final work? What was it called again? 1994? 1984? Oh, right, that's it. Chilling, wasn't it? I guess so. A bit cliched, though, don't you think? I mean, besides, Huxley was closer to the mark. Although your 1950s interlocutor would be familiar with Aldous Huxley's 1932 book, Brave New World, he wouldn't have heard Huxley's 1962 speech at Berkeley, ambitiously titled The Ultimate Revolution. It was in that speech that Huxley really pulled back the curtain on the myriad of technological and pharmacological techniques of mental manipulation that the technocrats and social engineers of modern times have at their disposal. Huxley contrasted George Orwell's nightmare vision of the tyrannically controlled 1984 society, a projection into the future of a society where control was exercised wholly by terrorism and violent attacks upon the mind-body of individuals, with his own vision of a brave new world of control through manipulation and reward. Quote, "If you can get people to consent to the state of affairs in which they're living, the state of servitude, the state of having their differences ironed out, and being made amenable to mass production methods on the social level, if you can do this, then you are likely to have a much more stable and lasting society, a much more easily controllable society than you would if you were relying wholly on clubs and firing squads and concentration camps." End quote. American media critic Neil Postman touched on these contrasting methods of social control in his 1985 book, Amusing Ourselves to Death. He pointed out how the nature of television news reporting, contextless, frantic, constantly shifting in focus, placates viewers and blunts their reaction to even the most brazen violations of personal liberty and public liberty. Quote, "For all his perspicacity, George Orwell would have been stymied by this situation. There is nothing Orwellian about it. The president does not have the press under his thumb. The New York Times and the Washington Post are not Pravda. The Associated Press is not TASS, and there is no newspeak here. Lies have not been defined as truth, nor truth as lies. All that has happened is that the public has adjusted to incoherence and been amused into indifference, which is why Aldous Huxley would not in the least be surprised by this story. Indeed, he prophesied its coming. He believed that it is far more likely that the Western democracies will dance and dream themselves into oblivion than march into it, single file and manacled. Huxley grasped, as Orwell did not, that it is not necessary to conceal anything from a public insensible to contradiction and narcoticized by technological diversions. Although Huxley did not specify that television would be our main line to the drug, he would have no difficulty accepting Robert McNeil's observation that television is the soma of Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. Big Brother, it turns out, is howdy doody. End quote. 1950s. I knew it! Television is the culprit. It's been a tool of commie brainwashers all along, and here we are inviting it into our homes and letting it rot the minds of our children. 2020s. TV? That's so 20th century. Now we have Netflix and Hulu and Peacock and Prime. We can check our TikTok feed while we're on the John listening to a podcast. We can even download Huxley's 1962 speech just like that, and for free. But why be a nerd and waste time listening to that boring old Brit? Hey, I hear the new Taylor Swift song just got leaked online. Ah, yes, bread and circuses. As our articulate, time-traveling interlocutor might observe, once Netflix, Hulu, Peacock, Prime, TikTok, and Taylor Swift are explained to him, plus ça change. But mere distraction is not the primary tool of societal control at the disposal of modern-day social engineers. Other elements of psychological manipulation are at work as well. There are, for instance, what Huxley in his speech identified as the techniques of terrorism. That is, techniques of inflicting mental or physical violence, pain, or stress on a target in order to manipulate or condition his behavior. These techniques, the modus operandi of Big Brother and the 1984 boot-on-the-face style police state, have been around since time immemorial. And Huxley insists are only becoming more effective as scientific methods are applied to refine them. One need only study the modern types of brainwashing, for example, to see how these modern techniques of terror constitute a real refinement on the older methods of terror, because they end up including a kind of voluntary acceptance of the state of affairs in which a given target finds himself. But beyond systems of control that rely on brute force and naked aggression, there exists what Huxley describes as an array of non-terroristic techniques for inducing consent and inducing people to love their servitude. Such non-terroristic control tactics include the use of psychopharmaceuticals and TV screen flicker rates as social media algorithms to induce voluntary consent in targeted individuals. Like the techniques of terror, these subtler methods of manipulation, too, are being constantly refined through empirical study and are now incredibly effective in swaying the opinions of vast swaths of the population. One need only witness the remarkable feats of pretzel logic that supporters of the establishment's geopolitical narratives are capable of to understand just how effective this form of mind control can be. The average establishment news junkie, for example, can go from hailing Osama bin Laden and his band of al-Qaeda agents as warriors for peace in 1990s Afghanistan, to reviling them as the epitome of evil responsible for the September 11, 2001 terror attacks, to accepting them as necessary allies in the war against Bashar al-Assad in Syria in the 2010s, all without experiencing cognitive whiplash. That the masses are capable of holding these flatly contrary positions at various times is itself a testament to the power of these non-terroristic techniques of persuasion. But what's even more remarkable is that the people who are molded by these master manipulators don't even notice these contradictions as contradictions. They're too entranced by the latest bells and whistles on their fondle slabs to be very aware of the world around them. 1950s. So wait, You're saying many Americans think a military coup would be a good thing? 2020s. And you're all becoming used to the idea of giving up your fingerprints like common criminals just so you can cross the borders between countries? And you'd rather members of Congress be randomly selected from the phone book than put your trust in the crooks voted into office? And you're all perfectly happy with this. Why aren't you outraged? Why aren't you throwing these damn magic boxes in the trash? Why aren't you soaking up the sweet summer sunshine and talking with your neighbors and living life anymore? Are you even listening to me? Sorry, what was that? I was texting my friend about this viral video I just watched. Never mind, I give up. Send me back to the 50s. Yeah. Thank you. Well, that's the extent of my acting capabilities for today. As I believe I articulated, so this is a collection of 20 essays along those lines and many others, talking about geopolitics and news and history and society and many other things besides. There's funny-ish sorts of things. There's serious sorts of things. There's essays with hundreds or over 100 footnotes. There's essays that are very short. There's one that is exceptionally short. There's essays about how I came to write this book and why I write. There's essays about the world in general and about humans and humanity in particular. So I hope you will enjoy it. It's been a labor of love, ultimately, is the way I would say it, because I do what I do because I love life. I love my family. I love the world. I love my fellow human beings. It sounds like a robot would say something like that. But anyway, it's true. I love the world, and that's why I do what I do. Not to fight in some aggressive war against the big bad them, but to protect and preserve and create and nurture the things that I love. So I hope you will enjoy this book. Thank you very much for being here today. I very much appreciate your attendance.
The Deep State. False Flags. 9/11 Truth. The Federal Reserve. Secret Wars and Hidden Histories. Fake News. Medical Martial Law. Ceaseless Propaganda. James Corbett. Reportage. Essays on the New World Order. Available where books are sold. Until they're not.
REPORTAGEBOOK.com